back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. And this is positively going to be one of my favorite segments. Many of you know that my dear friend Bill Cole from Cole Roofing implored me about 4 years ago after my wife survived her second bone marrow transplant to start doing things that were not sports conversations. Talk about things with people that may or may not be about the Ravens or the Orioles or the Terps. So I kind of took that to heart. We've launched Baltimore Positive, and as part of that, and launching Baltimore Positive with Don Moeller, who was my high school guidance counselor in 1982, has led me on a fun little journey of finding teachers that I have not caught up with, that I have not seen or visited with in over 40 years. So if you found that out at Baltimore Positive, there are a lot of segments like that coming down the pike where I'm catching up with people that maybe my old theater arts teacher, Mr. Riggs from high school at Dundalk High, is my Facebook friend. I'm looking forward to talking about Guys and Dolls and West Side Story with him. Don Moeller, you hear from all the time, but I'm chasing down Alan Stockton from Dundalk High School and Mr. Calvin Statham from Hollowbird Middle School and anyone else I can find. But this is a different kind of teacher. She has been in my life from really the beginning. I don't know that she ever really left my life. I met her on the first day of high school in third period, probably about 10:30 in the morning after I met Mr. Leifert. She was my 10th grade English teacher. Susan Monday, Miss Monday, was my radio producer for the early portion of Nasty Nestor in 1993, 1994. I have some pictures of that. She introduced me to Alan McCallum, who became my baseball foil and is still very much in my life, and came very, very close to asking Madam Speaker Nancy Pelosi a question last week on my Zoom. And we welcome her in from the coast of Rehoboth Beach, down the ocean, as we like to say. But she hails from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. She is a Jersey girl. She was my 10th grade English teacher and is very much in my life and pursued a life, crazily enough, in talk radio and sumo, as they call her down in the Del Mar. What's going on, Susan? How are you? It's a pleasure to have you on. If I refer to you as Miss Monday, just take it as a compliment, okay?
No,
please.
I do, and I would actually prefer that you call me Miss Monday. I often refer to myself on the air as Miss, like when I start to get real teacherish and didactic, I said the Miss Monday's coming out.
The Miss
Or when I try to correct people's grammar, the Miss Monday's coming out.
Well, look, I was looking to embarrass you fully by grabbing the high school yearbooks and pulling it all out, and I'll do that. And so Miss Wassel was my kindergarten teacher in 1973, and she really was the inspiration for this. She found me on the internet 4 or 5 years ago. She lives in Yulee, Florida, Jacksonville, and she threw me a note, and I threw her a note back, and I was supposed to go see her, believe it or not, over a Rolling Stones concert 2 summers ago. Remember, Mick got sick. The tour got canceled. I didn't go to Jacksonville. I haven't seen her. So I set up a Zoom with her, and then she got ill, and I'm trying to get her better. So in the meantime, she's going to be like the John Wooden at the top of the pyramid for me. But, I mean, having you back on the program after all these years and your radio travails and journeys and your life, and you were in human resources at one point. I mean, you've had a really storied, sort of wide career in a lot of different places, and you've lived in different places. But, like, I don't really know the story about how you became my English teacher. And you and I have had beer together. We've water skied together. We've hung out together. We've gone to games together. You know, I mean, you're very much in my life, and you know that. But I've never asked you, like, I know you went to Delaware. You're a blue hen like Joe Flacco, but I don't know anything about, like, your journey from, like, why you wound up in Dundalk High School on the second floor. And was it room 220, 218? What room number were you? You remember?
222.
222. There it is. All right, good. So give me the story. Let me hear it.
The story is this. I had always wanted to be a teacher, and so I pursued that path at the University of Delaware. But along around the time I was 14 or 15, I grew up in the 70s, I really got into classic rock, because back in the 70s, radio stations like WMMR in Philadelphia, they could play whole albums. And so I was really into that. I was really into albums and music and classic rock.
So let me guess. Yes, Genesis, Bowie. That's what they played back then, right?
Yeah, and so I envisioned myself as really working on radio when I was a teenager. And I remember being at the University of Delaware pursuing this degree in English education, which, I love English, I love reading, so that um, was really a good path for me to follow. However, I remember going down to the student center, which is where they had the radio station at the University of Delaware, and it kind of was like a scene out of the Howard Stern movie. I was afraid. I was afraid to go in, if you can believe that. I just couldn't bring myself to go in and say, I really want to do this. And I didn't. And so I became a teacher and taught for about 8 years. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I got into the field of human resources, which is also education. I was a training director. So my skill sets lie in teaching and training and explaining things to people. And around the time I turned 40, you have a little voice in your head telling you to do things. Well, around the time I turned 40, I kept saying to him, I hear this little voice saying, you really should get into radio. It was like kind of driving me to do that. And so from that point forward, I started to seek out opportunities to make the transition out of the human resources world into radio, which is where I've more or less been for the last 20 years, with a little a stop in the wine industry. I worked in the wine industry for a bit. So
that makes me thirsty, Sue.
What's that?
That makes me thirsty.
Yeah. So I taught until 1985, and while I enjoyed my students, for me, the handwriting was on the wall. Because I went to Catholic school, and public school is different. And I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall, which was, I remember when I would be having to have a meeting with like the vice principal and the parents, and the vice principal would kind of kowtow to the parents and wouldn't really stick up for the teachers. And so I thought to myself, I think I need to go. This is not the right place for me. So I taught for 8 years. It was a good 8 years. It's in my blood. I always think, first and foremost, I am a teacher at heart.
See, I would have seen you as a professor. You know what I mean? I would have seen you doing much better with like adults or people maybe on the road to being an adult, and it would have been much more peer-to-peer in some way. Like, I mean, you always spoke to me, and I was a chunky little 13-year-old kid when I met you, right? And, and you were a youngish teacher that sort of commanded the room, and I liked English. Sue, I have your markup, and I like literally, I should have brought it up here. I literally have my 10th grade paper that you gave me an A on, and I have your handwriting, the whole deal, right? Because I kept stuff like that because I was a writer. And when you acknowledge that I wrote something good when all I ever wanted to do was be a writer, that I'm like, well, you believe in me. And
you had a very good command of the English language at an early age. I would almost describe you as precocious. And I actually jotted down some of my memories of you.
Oh, wow. Well, now I wish you had a better mic for sure.
I just felt that one of the things I liked about you is that you could relate easily with adults, and only you can attest as to why that is. But a lot of kids are intimidated by adults, can't have a conversation with adults. You, at a young age, how old were you, 13, 14, could converse with adults. And the other thing I really liked about you, because it was kind of the way I grew up, you could rib a teacher and not have it cross a line. So I want you to know that. And that was something, because I can't remember, exactly what you said to me, but you could joke around with me and I'm sure other teachers, but you never crossed a line, which I think, it wouldn't be like that today. So I liked you immediately because I liked your spirit, and I liked that you were very articulate and you were a good writer, are a good writer.
Well, I guess
you also like classic rock, which is, of course, one of music, which is always one of my great interests.
Well, two of my regrets are that I had Tom Petty tickets, and you and I were going to go to see Tom Petty at the Capitol Center, and he punched a hole in the wall, and the tour got canceled long after dark. You can Google it and look it up. and the tour never happened. And I had 2 tickets for ELO, and I didn't know anybody that liked ELO, and you were willing, you drove. So we didn't wind up going to either one. They got canceled. We never went to a concert, but we did go to a World Series game together. And you being from Philadelphia and me being from Baltimore, my dad got tickets for Game 4 of the World Series. You can go look this one up. It was a Saturday afternoon. And because you love the Phillies, we actually went to a World Series. You could never do that 37 years later. But there was something about younger teachers for me that felt more comfortable than someone that was from another generation. And maybe I should have said that to Julie John because she was a younger teacher. It's not that I didn't get along with older teachers, but people that were closer and hipper and into classic rock and into baseball and into things that younger people were into in 1982 or 83, like MTV, sort of made all the difference in the world for how you relate. I remember Moeller loving Loverboys working for the Weekend, and I haven't even brought that up with him. And I remember how much you love Tom Petty now that you brought it up. But there was something that made that cooler, and Don Leifer, that made it a part of my life that made those people want to stay in my life. That it wasn't just, well, you were my teacher from September to June, and you had nothing to offer after I left. There was a part of that when you spend an hour a day every day with someone for 9 months, that you either gravitate toward them. And I have a bunch of teachers that I never kept in touch with that didn't mean anything, but the ones that did, I always felt like that was sort of a lifetime commitment for you, that if I hit you 40 years later to come on my Zoom, you'd be obligated, Sue.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you're 52 now, is that correct?
52 tomorrow as of this taping, yes, October 14th. That's correct.
So we've got a 13-year age difference, and maybe back then 13 years was a lot, but it certainly isn't a lot now, right?
But we had 8 tracks in Boston and Steve Miller Band and the Rolling Stones. I remember before I even knew you, my English teacher, and this is true, and I hope I can find Judy Haig, Judy Edgar, Steve Edgar. If anybody knows them, find them for me. Judy Haig was my 8th grade homeroom teacher. And in 8th grade, the Rolling Stones toured on the Tattoo You tour. And she had gone to the concert the night before and wore the tour shirt the next day. And there's just something about those kinds of teachers. And at that time, and I can start naming Rick Zentz and Joe Pazorek, I'll give you some oxygen to talk about Joe and Don Leifer and anybody else who've left us. But those people that loved music, Pazorek would play Stairway to Heaven on his guitar. Leifer was in movies and liked wrestling and liked journalism. And we were into the same things. That the age difference, I wouldn't say it was big brotherly or uncle, but there was a real authenticity, Sue, to all of you being younger teachers, that there's a reason you and Moeller and anybody else that's still alive still very much in my life.
Mm-hmm. And I think just like in talk radio, because we both are in that field, when you reveal something about yourself personally, which I did with my students, that forms a bond. You do it on the air, that forms a bond. You do it with your students, the same thing. So you knew things about me personally, and I certainly knew things about you personally as well.
Susan Monday is my guest. Tell everybody where to find you and what you're doing. And you were on the air for so long, and then you went west, then you're east, and you're in Rehoboth now, which means you're close enough for me to come down and get a sandwich or something one day when the weather's good. But give everybody a little update on you, because you're going to have students. And I thought you taught longer than that for some reason. I
did not. I only taught 8 years, and then left because I wanted to pursue some other things. But like I said, I've been in radio off and on for about the last 20 years. I worked for CBS in Philadelphia and New York. I worked for ABC in Washington. And then in the recession in 2008, a lot of radio stations cut staff. So I lost my job then. I was working for CBS, and I got into the wine industry. I always like to have a plan B, Nestor. And so I was living up in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania at the time, and I had a little part-time job at the Chadds Ford Winery, learning about wine. And then I went back to school and learned more about wine. So I worked in the wine industry until the radio industry started hiring again.
Did you get to go to Longwood Gardens a lot?
Oh, yeah. I love Longwood Gardens. Also, the Brandywine Museum, home of Andrew Wyeth. Yeah, that's a really, really
I took my
lovely.
wife up, and so this. Okay, let me pay homage to another teacher, Betsy Johnson, whose name came up, who was the most influential teacher I ever had. She loved Longwood Gardens. Our sixth grade trip, we went to Longwood Gardens, and we went to Philadelphia to the Independence Hall, and she loved. And I haven't been, Sue. I haven't been since 1979.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you know, Kurt Schilling and Shonda Schilling, when he pitched
Oh,
for the
right.
Phillies, they lived around the corner, and I would go to their Christmas event back before I had to throw them off my Facebook for dropping F-bombs and calling me names. But I had never taken my wife to Longwood Gardens. So this year, obviously, with social distancing and all the issues, I finally said to her, we should go do this. So for our anniversary in July, it was about 104 degrees. It was really hot. But we were socially distanced with the mask, and we went up to Longwood Gardens, and it is just spectacular, right? So, and it's something we need to do again when we get the fountains and they get the fireworks and the symphony and do all that stuff.
Christmas. Christmas is a wonderful time to be at Longwood Gardens.
Well, and so you live near there. So, okay, so you're doing wine. I'm just picturing that because, like, it was one of those things a teacher gave me in 1979 that I pulled out of the hat during a plague in 2020, you know?
So if you think about it, there's an educational component to wine. So when I think about the trajectory of my life, everything I've done has an educational piece to it. So my job was to educate customers and employees on the different products. I worked for the largest distributor in the country, Southern Wine and Spirits, and had a lot of products. Did a lot of drinking back then.
I bet you did. I bet you got a good Malbec. Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of good trips to Sonoma and Napa and to Oregon, to Willamette Valley. So I would say I know more than the average bear about wine, but there's so much to know about wine. I like the educational component of it. Anyway, when radio came back, I got a job offer from Delmarva Broadcasting, which owned a station in Wilmington, Delaware, and they were starting a talk station down at the beach. And I took the job thinking I was only going to be there for a year. I had 8 years with them, and they sold the company last year, and I lost my job. So it was kind of a forced retirement. I think retirement's a dirty word. I want to be working, and so I am working at part-time at another station down here at the beach. WGMD.com are the station call letters. WGMD. So I'm doing that part-time. I miss it. I missed it very much. I wanted to get back into it in some way, shape, or form, and so I am doing it on a part-time basis.
Well, it's good to catch up with you, and I think catching up with all my teachers and hearing about their journey, whatever their journey is. For some, they stayed with students forever. Others didn't. I'm having the daughter on of a lifer teacher who taught for 50 years. He taught me English in the 2nd and 3rd grade, who I loved, and she's left us, but her daughter plays the bass in an awesome band, and she's going to come on next week and talk about having a mom that was a teacher. I would just say for you in searching back and forth, you've always, I mean, you loved English, so you searched out English teaching, then you loved radio, so you sought that out. You liked wine and teaching people. I would say leaving education is something I've talked to Don Moeller a lot about, and about what our children are getting now. And I mean, something you left 35 years ago because you thought it was broken then. And then I meet other teachers today, right? And I say, how is it, blackboards and chalk and things that just don't make any sense anymore. And when I have like Sonia Santelises on from Baltimore City, or Dr. Darrell Williams, any of these folks on about educating young people today, tablets, Wi-Fi, now during the plague, learning from home, it's really incredible. And the hardest part, and I say this with all due respect to you and a tip of the cap to you, that the industry loses really bright, awesome people for whatever reason, whether it's politics or whether it's money or whatever it is. A lot of people who taught me, society might have been a whole lot better if they would have kept more of the Sue Mondays around. I guess that's my point.
Well, I appreciate that, and I often, when I have looked back, I often think that I would have made a good principal, but that was not a track I went down, and ultimately I got on the track that I wanted to do when I was 14 or 15, and that was radio. And I love talk radio. Again, there's an educational component to that for sure. And I've really enjoyed it, and I hope I'm able to continue for some additional years in that field. Hey, can we talk about that Phillies game though? We didn't. We just kind of skimmed right over it.
Well, the Orioles won, and yeah, it was good.
Oh, so what?
Yeah.
That's all there is to talk about it because the Orioles won the World Series?
Well, Joe Morgan died this week. So I brought this up with my wife, with Joe Morgan, with the hitch in his leg. And, you think of him as a Red. And then I thought, oh, my God, he hit the home run that beat us in game one. And then, then the Phillies went good night. But the game we went to was the Eddie Murray home run game on that Saturday. And still, we had good seats. We were down like right above the scoreboard in right field. It was really that's a legendary memory. I wish we would have had a camera that day, Sue. We had no pictures of it.
I had anxiety about going there because my sister was also attending the game, and my parents are from Philadelphia. I was born in Philadelphia. I had anxiety because by that point, what year was that game?
1983, October of 83.
Right. So I had been teaching for about 7 years, living in Baltimore for 7 years, and my loyalties actually were with the Orioles. And so it was a really tough place for me to be because the Philadelphia fans, they're not exactly the most endearing group of people. And I just thought, man, if I start rooting for the Orioles, I'm going to be in trouble. So it was a tough spot, but I mean, it's a good memory for sure.
Man, I remember sitting there with you. I remember the green. I remember our seats. I remember the home run landing below us because we were in the 500. I have the ticket stub, and it's a wonderful memory. Susan Monday, Miss Monday for our purposes, my 10th grade English teacher. Sue, I'm trying to chase down Alan Stockett and some other folks from Dundalk. I'm trying to think of folks at George Schulin that are still around. We lost Mr. Fantasia a couple years ago. People that I connected with that were still in my life in one way or another. Joe Pazuric, and I know it probably shocked you over the weekend. I threw you and I was trying to track you down anyway, and then I found a picture of Joe and you and me that night at the barn back at my 6th anniversary, and I shared that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was it was January 15th, 1998. I looked the date back up on that, and I just feel horrible because you and I have always stayed in touch, and I just didn't stay in touch with Paz, and he had a Facebook page and everything, and I just didn't, I wasn't in touch with him, and I wish I would have had a conversation with him, and that's one of the reasons I'm on this journey with teachers. I don't want words to go unspoken like that, but those were the good times. I loved high school. I loved my teachers. I loved English. I liked learning. I liked The Catcher in the Rye. Some of those.
Love that book.
I never read Grape of Wrath. I read the Cliff Notes and I lied to you. So I'm just throwing that out right now, 37 years later. All right. I never read East of Eden.
You never read The Catcher in the Rye?
I read The Catcher in the Rye. Absolutely. I read it 10 times. Yes. Okay. I just didn't read what's give me the author. The guy from California.
Salinger.
No, the other one, the Grapes of Wrath, East of Eden.
Oh, Steinbeck.
Steinbeck. Yeah, I didn't read the Steinbeck books. I love the Salinger
book. You're mixing your years up.
But probably the reason I didn't read is Tom Sullivan taught me that, and he and I didn't get along. So, and by the way, Karen Douglas gave me a D in journalism senior year. So there.
Oh my goodness. Really?
She did. Yeah, I probably earned it. I was off getting croissant sandwiches with Shonda Brewer at the Burger King on Merritt Boulevard, cutting class, doing stuff I shouldn't have done.
I remember you were the Rock Critic for, what was it called? The paper, it was the evening version of the paper in Baltimore.
It was the Baltimore News American, and then the Evening Sun after that, correct?
Yeah. Boy, papers. Things have changed in the world of newspapers, haven't they?
Well, it's fascinating. My father died in July of 1992. He was pissed at me, and he had some dementia and whatnot, but he was angry that I left the paper. I left the paper on January 15th, 1992, Martin Luther King Day, and I drove to the Super Bowl, 1992. And my dad died 6 months later, and he just thought that the job at the paper, I would get a gold watch, I'd have a pension. I'd have a job for life, right? Like and I just had my college professor, Julie Simon, who I love on, and I haven't talked to her in 30 years, and she avoided me. And Sue, you'll appreciate this. I broke out to Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message on her from college. And I think about that life and what I went to school for, and all I wanted to be was Oscar Madison. You know that. All I wanted to do was be the sports columnist that got to go to the World Series and cover the big games and write the piece and talk to athletes. That's all I wanted to do. It's all I ever wanted to do. And the notion that job doesn't exist, it'll never exist again. I don't know how to put that back in, which is why I'm doing Baltimore Positive, because I think there needs to be a different kind of vision of what I'm going to be at 52, because reading box scores and arguing with baseball fans that's 30 years ago. That's not what my job can ever be again.
Yeah. I understand that for sure.
Well, I guess from radio and newspaper. You went into radio as well, and people come to me all the time, and they look to me to mentor them. Tell me how to get a gig in radio. I'm I'm still trying to figure that out. PAL would never hire me.
Yeah, I would never advise someone to go into radio, because I'm not going to say it's a dying industry, but with syndication, it's tough to make your mark in radio, I think.
Well, I think you should go back to wine.
Well, that's always a possibility.
Well,
sure.
I love you. I miss you. I hope you're okay. I wore Eagles. This is my El Guapo shirt. I could have gotten in a black or a green. So we're playing the Eagles this week, and I figured it's not why I had you on to do, obviously, any Philadelphia-Baltimore thing, but we miss you in Baltimore, and we're gonna heal the city, heal the country, and fix this place before it's all over with. All right?
I would love to have seen some photos. I listened to your podcast with Julie Janda, and you had pictures, and I know there are pictures to be had of us when you were at Dundalk High School. Where are they?
I don't know that there's anything with you and I in them together.
Right. This Monday's going to correct your English right there. Perfect. You said with you and I. I'm going to say, Nestor, that is wrong, my friend.
I'm glad you had a chance to do that 40 minutes into this. That makes me feel so 15 all over again.
Okay.
So what happened was,
and you better not cut that out of this podcast, by the way.
It was funny. I'm not going to. Believe me, I don't do any editing around here. Okay. So I had all the pictures on the floor, and my son's birthday was a couple weeks ago, and I found a whole stuff of him, and then this teacher thing has happened. So I'm unearthing things. I literally do know where it all is. I can get my hands on it. I did not before this particular conversation, but I will put some stuff on the interweb that should embarrass everyone, and including Don Moeller. So I'll do all that. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope at some point we can meet halfway somewhere near the Bay Bridge, near the Dover racetrack or something, and say hello and have a coffee or something, or some wine. All right?
Yes.
Take care and be safe.
Thank you.
Miss Monday. She corrected my English at the end. It's perfect. If we do a segment again, I'm going to get the paper out where I got the A and all of her.
That's what you should be holding up. Yes.
It's handwritten. Sue, it's handwritten. It's not type. I didn't know how to use a typewriter. I've told my wife the story, and I've told Moeller this. You see, Moeller and I have been very close forever.
Yes.
And we sit at the football games together, and he was running the county 2 years ago, and all the Trumpism, all the stuff that's going on in the world, Freddie Gray, all the things that happened in my world for businesses and the cities. It's how we did Baltimore Positive. But it took me about 8 months into talking to politicians and sitting and having coffee and doing business together, just doing all this stuff, that it came to me how it happened. We were Jennings Cafe, and I turned to him, I'm like, Don, I just had a moment of clarity, right? That the reason that I met him was because when I signed up in middle school for the journalism class, I didn't get it. And the marching orders that you get, by the way, because you're in a state that votes, everyone votes. It came in an envelope like my ballot did. But when I got my Dundalk High paperwork, you were actually on it. I remember this distinctly. The word Monday was on it, that you were my third period English teacher, and I had no problem with you or it or any of that. One of my friends had you and said, oh, she's kind of young but really tough. You were a tough teacher. You were considered to be, you were a hard ass. Like, that's what you were considered to be. That's fine. But I really wanted to be in a journalism class. And when I got my marching orders, I didn't get journalism. I got something else, right? And I'm like, I need to be a journalist, and I'm going to be Oscar Madison, and Mr. Steppen's going to love me one day. And I need. So my parents, my stepbrother put me in the Malibu, drove me down Delville Avenue in August before any orientation. My dad comes marching in, we gotta get my son into journalism class. So Moeller is the young, sort of cool, hip guy meeting us at the door. Everybody's afraid of Dundalk because of race, and we didn't have any African-American children in my middle school, my neighborhood. I've learned about blockbusting and sort of things like that later on in life. But so I'm at Dundalk, and Don was the man who met me at the front door at the office right on the left by the Owl. Come on in, Mr. McGurk, Mr. Aparicio, he called him, of course, right? Mr. McGurk, come on in. And Don got it sorted out. And when I said, I need to be in Mr. Leifert's class, because it was EIFER, Donald Leifert, he's the newspaper. I need to write for the Owl. And so Don Moeller got me into Don Leifert's class, and he put me into a typewriting class with Alex Polanis. And as you can see, I'm missing a finger.
Yeah.
And Alex Polanis was a hard ass, New Jersey. He was a bodybuilder. He was the coach of the wrestling team. He put me on the wrestling team where I didn't belong. And he put the paper over top of the digits on the typewriter down the hallway. I quacked out of that class like 2 weeks later. Mr. Moeller, my finger, So I wound up in Joyce Bucci's art appreciation class, and I wound up in Eve Lawless's horticulture class. I learned about begonias. I learned about like carnations, all this stuff. I learned about photosynthesis. I learned all that because I quacked out of typewriting class because I was never good on a typewriter. So that's why all my papers are handwritten.
Is that still the case today? That you're not
No, I type 100 words a minute. I'm a maniac. Computer helped me. You know what helped me was the backspace on a computer. I learned to type at the News American when I went in there by taking box scores with I had the phone. See, still have an old school phone. I had the phone up to my ear like this, and I learned how to type like this. But it had a backspace button that the typewriter ribbon didn't have, so it allowed for me to make mistakes and get away with it. And then once I started making mistakes and getting away with it, Stu, I never stopped, So that's my typing story. So that's how I met Moeller. But you were always on my agenda. You were always, I remember the original classes that got jostled around the beginning and the end of the day. And you were meant to be my 10th grade English teacher. You were meant to teach me Catcher in the Rye. You taught me To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yes, that is correct.
Now I got to bring this up because when my wife and I were together on a football trip last year at the height of Trumpism and all of the impeachment, all of that, we were on a football trip, and on a Saturday afternoon in whatever courtyard we were staying in, whatever city, maybe it was Seattle. It was a rainy day in Seattle. It was a year ago this week. She was flipping through television, and I didn't feel like watching college football. We were about to go to Hawaii for the first time in our lives. And she tripped upon To Kill a Mockingbird on whatever channel. And we sat there spellbound for 2 hours on a rainy day in Seattle, eating really good pizza and really good banana cream pies, I remember, from Tom Douglas's joint. A plug for Serious Pie in Seattle there. But, and we watched it, and the unfairness of it and the race and all of it, and I hadn't watched it in 40 years. My wife loves it. That's why you love my wife. My wife loves it. Yeah. And so you taught me that. I mean, watching that a year ago, it's made me make Baltimore positive. It's made me try to open lanes of conversation that really began in your classroom, Sue.
Thank you, Nestor. That means a lot to me.
And I did read it, and I didn't do the cliff notes like I did for Grapes of Wrath and East of Eden, okay?
Oh, good. I'm glad, because you would have missed out if you never read that book.
Well, Catcher in the Rye is still my favorite book.
Yeah,
and you know
I
what?
know how much you love that.
You know what's weird?
I'll never forget this. I don't think I could get away with this today, or any teacher could. I remember when I gave the test out for Catcher in the Rye, and you know how Holden Caulfield tries to erase
all the FUs, yes.
No, his sister wouldn't see it. Well, I actually put that quote from that book with the curse word in it. I think I probably blanked out a couple of the letters, and I got called down to the principal's office because I was asking like a thematic kind of question, and I used a particular line from the book, and I guess some parent saw it, and I got questioned by Live McDonald about what I had done on that test.
So I got to tell you this, because I mean, now we're really getting Freudian. Now that I opened the Tony Robbins can of molar and my finger and all that, yeah. I remember you were the first teacher that challenged me to, and I was a good writer, so I could write about anything, but I preferred to write about professional wrestling or Rush or Led Zeppelin or whatever.
Right.
You were the first one to force me to sit and read a real book and do a legitimate book report so I could get a legitimate A. And in a couple of years, I got very bored in middle school, and I loved elementary school, but I didn't like middle school much. So you started on this theme thing, and I'll never forget this. I'm sure I said this to you. And then, little squat, chunky, Ovaltine version of me, I'm sure I said to you, themes? This is all bullshit. I'm sure I said that to you. And now all these years later at 52, the only thing in my life that matters is what The Catcher in the Rye taught me about people and what To Kill a Mockingbird taught me about people in society, right? Like the theme
is it.
Is it. That's all that matters. Doesn't even matter what Holden Caulfield's name is or even the brass ring or this carousel or the hooker. But none of that matters.
What's the message? What's the message?
Well, you know what? And this takes me to Julie Simon, which will connect all of my teacher pieces here this month, brought to you by Cole Roofing, which is the medium is the message. So there, I'll leave it at that. Hey, next time we get together, you're bringing me some wine from Chad's Ford. We should get together. We should meet at Longwood Gardens, and we can be socially distanced and have a good time.
All right. Sounds good.
That's a challenge to you. I love you, Sue. Be good.
Love you too. Take care.
Susan Monday, Miss Monday, Catcher in the Rye. I thought she taught Grapes of Wrath. I wanted to tell her I didn't read the book. That's a bummer. We'll get Alan Stockett around here. I don't know. Who else are we going to get? Miss Wassel, my kindergarten teacher. I'm trying really hard to convince my fifth grade teacher, Miss Young Hesterberg, to come on. I'm going to have to work on that. Joyce Bucci, I don't know if she wants any part of me. If she does, bring it on. I'm here to talk about art appreciation and Degas and the Van Gogh that hangs on my wall because of her. So I'm willing to do the ear in the envelope. I'll do it all. I'm a new world man here, man. It's like a Rush song. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I want you to get out to El Guapo. They gave me the green shirt for Eagles Week. I had the quesadillas the other night. I only had one margarita because I had to drive. My wife got the pleasure of having a second one, but I'll fix that next time around. We are WNST.net AM 1570. We're talking to teachers. We're talking to athletes. We're talking to coaches. And we're learning stuff. It's Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.